Hi, everybody. Welcome back to a new episode of the Fundamentalists. We're back in action. Pete has finally returned from Belfast to Ireland, and he has a show and tell that we're going to be starting with, which if you would like to see the video version, you can go to youtube.com/Elliott Morgan. Otherwise, we'll just describe it as best we can so that if you're driving in traffic right now, you can be filled with wonderful imagery.
Yes, okay, yeah, I want to start off by saying I was away for a month in Belfast, and when I got back, I had a whole pile of crap letters, like, junk stuff.
Yeah.
And then in the midst of it, there was this poster-sized, one of those rules.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, and I opened it up, and there were 3 beautiful
nice.
pieces that I'm going to show.
Also, the letters I write you were not crap. I miss you, and it's my way of keeping in touch.
Please stop. Yeah. No, this was a very particularly lovely letter from Katie. So I want to say thank you, Katie, who sent me. I don't know if I'll be able to show these or not.
It definitely is very intricate.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Very kind of. I should be close to the microphone. Very kind of existentially melancholic. So you've got these characters, these figures who are all very isolated. One in an urban scene. I love this one. It's kind of an urban scene of kind of a closing down.
Let me see. Point it over here. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, with kind of there is, and interestingly, Katie said about how over COVID, like a lot of us, it's quite an isolating time, and I think in your art you captured a lot of that existential kind of isolation, but sending me those pieces as a thank you for what we do, that's very beautiful. So thank you. I just wanted to say very much appreciated that, and I felt bad that they may have been sitting for a month before I saw them.
That's okay. Now you're going to get a flood of new things.
Is that right?
You're going to, now that we've mentioned it, it's going to be like Christmas for you.
So yeah, you can give us gifts. We will take.
I love gifts.
Money and gifts and alcohol. Yeah.
Yep. And if it's just a gift, we'll just exchange it for money. So it's fine. Thank you. How was I? We'll dive into the subject in a second, but a little preview. We're going to be talking about Kierkegaard, comedy, religious mentality, comedic mentality, a little bit of that, I'm assuming.
Yeah, all of the above.
Very fun. It's gonna be
It's gonna be good.
We're gonna be a little philosophical.
Old school fundamentalists.
Whoa!
Yay!
All right. Let's see how it goes. But first, how was?
Had a blast. So, because I hadn't really been home a lot because of the obvious reasons. I was only going to go home for 2 weeks to do my festival, which I loved. Lots of people who watched the Fundamentals. Lots of people looking for you.
Next time.
So it was a younger crowd. So there were a lot of people in their 20s who came out and who'd either come to it because they listened to this podcast or other podcasts that I've been on. So did the festival. It was a really great energy of some people who'd been coming for years, some people for the first time.
Cool.
Really had a blast. Richard Boothby was brilliant. Jameson Webster was fantastic. Padraig O'Tuama was brilliant, who I work with a lot. Cool. Really brilliant poet. So we had a fantastic time, and then just hanging out with friends and family. I had a blast. So I kept on postponing coming home.
Yes.
I did miss you. I missed you a lot. You were the main person I missed.
It's okay.
You and Daniel, but Daniel's moved to Mexico.
Ooh.
Our friend Daniel is
off in Mexico.
Off to Mexico City, and I think he's moving there permanently.
We go where the spirit leads us.
Exactly. Yes, he does. He is a very free spirit.
Good for him.
Yeah.
I hope he's enjoying it. There's not many things better than meeting, I think, somebody who listens to a podcast. It's such a fun. It feels so nice. So thank you guys.
Well,
very much.
I was you kind of forget people listen to this. You're still really chatting, and then you go, oh, people actually tune in. So even though we don't do it that often,
yeah. Our consistency is made up for by high quality episodes.
Of course, like today. Today's going to be a high quality episode.
Let's dive in, Pete. Tell me about this soaring Kierkegaard.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the reason why I thought of this topic was because I was round at Elliott's house 2 nights ago. We were lovely. We had some drinks, hung out.
Goose did great.
Goose did great. Man, I do consider myself like a St. Francis of Assisi with animals. I do think I get on with animals.
What?
Yeah.
A who?
Who?
Saint Francis Assisi.
Of Assisi?
Of Assisi.
Do you not know St. Francis of Assisi?
I've heard that before, but the fact that you could rattle it off so perfectly is
yeah.
really impressive. What did patron saint of animals?
I think he might be the patron saint of animals because you will see images of him with animals, and he supposedly mythologically had a very good way with animals. Yep. I mean, I could be completely wrong about that, but I think that's correct.
So you got a little bit of that.
Yeah. So I pride myself, but everyone likes to think they're like that. But Goose, I mean, can I say this? But I don't want to embarrass him. But like, he can be a little bit edgy.
Well, she
maybe that's why
so
she
right
gets edgy,
gate.
because I miss what do you call it? Using misgendering. Shit, that's what I've been doing wrong.
Yep, that's it.
I feel bad. So, but she can be a little bit edgy.
She can be a little edgy. She's got a little bit of a
But when I'm around, you're the one who's edgy. Not Goose is fine, and you're the one going, "Oh, Goose, it's all okay." And so, you're the one I'm worried about.
Well, I'm only like that because you're there.
Yeah. But you think Goose is going to attack me?
Well, yeah, she could. Oh, I did it.
Yeah.
She definitely.
We're going to get cancelled.
She's just a very special dog. She's just a very unique dog where you can't do things that you could kind of normally, that you would expect to do around a dog. But
there's a few funny things. I
do love her, and she does love you, I think. She's getting there.
Yeah,
so
I get on very well. But there's a few things, like one of the fun things that she does is you do tell her to do things a lot, and she just doesn't do them.
Nah.
But I love the fact that you don't give up.
No.
You'll go to your bed, and literally Goose will not do anything. You go to your bed, we'll just stand there.
Like, all right, fine.
But you keep trying to tell her to do things.
She does know, and because when Grace is out of town, which she is now, it's like Goose and I have borderline like a human relationship where I can be like, you gotta go there, and it's like I say it once, and she's like, all right, I got it. But when you're over there, there's a little bit of like, I'm gonna do whatever I want, and I need to protect you, and I need to protect, and I gotta be on guard, and but yeah, she's getting used to it. She's just not. She doesn't get a lot of friends over very often. So
but I haven't seen her like I haven't seen this because you said like she can snap.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen her snap yet.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to keep it that way.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's good stuff. I mean, it's just in the snap, you can't make like kissy noises. She hates that. And so it's stuff that even I have to like remind myself, and be like, oh yeah, I can't do that, because you see the trigger go off, and you go, okay, calm down, don't get it twisted.
Yeah.
She's a beautiful dog. And then in the morning, she comes up in the bed, and she just literally like puts just her entire big bulldog body on me, and like starts just getting directly in my face at like 6:30 in the morning, and it's annoying and cute at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's very nice.
Yeah. Well, that was a derailment, but I was there at your house.
Oh yes, sorry.
With Goose. No, yeah, it was my fault. And we got talking about various things, including the idea of synchronicity, and talked about that. And then we got on to comedy, and I was talking about Kierkegaard, and I thought that you would like his angle and what comedy is, because you're working on you're working on an hour-long piece, are you? Or kind of, it's in the back of your mind.
Back of my mind. It exists there. I'd like to do a third comedy hour just to sort of have it, to do it. But it'll be probably years down the road. But yeah, working on other stuff in the meantime. But yeah. It's rattling around in the back. Like,
But I was thinking that in terms of what you're wanting to do, Kierkegaard's kind of reflections on comedy, I think you would like it.
Cool.
And want to steer you in the right direction, get you into something good.
To the most hilarious people.
Yes.
They
do say Kierkegaard was the funniest philosopher he ever lived. That's not saying much, but he's very comedic writing sometimes. Yeah.
I have a pair of socks with his face on it.
That's right. Oh yeah, very nice.
That's as comedic as I've seen. But what are his ideas on comedy?
Okay. Yeah. Brilliant. So he kind of writes about it in a few places, but primarily in a book called Concluding Unscientific Postscripts to the Philosophical Fragments. Catchy, which, by the way, is an ironic book. So Kierkegaard was brilliant because he did do comedic things with writing. So, for example, a postscript is supposed to be very small. When you write a postscript to something, it's a little tiny extra. So this is the postscript to a book that he wrote. And the postscript is 5 times bigger than the philosophical fragments. So, calling it, this is just the postscript to that book. And yet it's like a wink. Tomb, a little. So he does these funny things, and he writes in pseudonyms. So this is a guy called Johannes Climacus, I think who writes basically this. And Soren Kierkegaard is the editor of the book.
Okay.
And by the way, so I think he'd even sometimes publish 2 books on the same day that would take different positions on something. So he would do these really interesting things.
That's fun. There's nothing not fun about that.
Yeah, he had a comedic, ironic, humorous way about his writing. And in the concluding unscientific postscript, he is basically articulating what is comedy. He thinks that there's a comedic dimension to reality itself. Mm-hmm. And he connects it with Christianity, which we may or may not get into, but basically he argues, so I'll put out a few things and then we'll take it from there.
Hit it.
He argues that comedy, and you can break comedy into subgenres of like what he calls humor and irony, but comedy works by a contradiction, some sort of asymmetry, some sort of thing that like is not the norm, that kind of that surprises you, that you never saw coming. So comedy works with that. And he talks about how, something's comedic. It's not comedic. If someone wears crazy clothes all the time, they wear crazy clothes all the time, that might be comedic within society. Everyone dresses a certain way. It's one person doesn't. But what's comedic for that person is if they dress up one day in a suit and tie. That's comedic because you're not used to it. The norm is that they dress in a crazy way, but now they dressed in a normal way. Or if someone who dresses normally goes to a wedding dressed as a clown, there's something comedic about that, just visually comedic, that in an environment where the norm is everybody dresses in suits.
Decentering, destabilizing, off. Yeah.
Yes. Now, what's interesting here is Kierkegaard says, well, some people, if you turn up at a wedding like that, some people will not find it pleasurable, they'll find it annoying, right? And that's what tragedy is. So tragedy for Kierkegaard is when you suffer contradiction, when there are contradictions that happen and you basically find them troubling, they cause you suffering. And comedy is when you take pleasure in the contradictions. You take a certain enjoyment from the surprise, the novelty, the whatever. But then he says, when he gets to kind of the major point, is he says that there's something inherently comedic or inherently tragic about life. And what he means by that is he says that he talks about it's important to be earnest, right? And to be earnest is to give yourself over to something. Maybe it's serving the poor. Maybe it's to love. Maybe it's to your academic work. So it's an importance to be earnest about something, your religion or your whatever, right? Your political party. But there's also something very something very ridiculous about being earnest from the perspective of the universe.
Yes.
Everything you're doing is utterly pointless. Whether you want to be a great cook or do well in your exams, who cares from the perspective of infinity and eternity, like when you look at the size of the universe? So Kierkegaard says the problem is, like, if you're too earnest, you become obtusively kind of earnest. You take everything really seriously, think you can know things, you think you're important, and that's bad. Or if you kind of lose yourself to the infinity of the universe and say, well, there's no point loving or working or giving myself over to anything because nothing makes any sense. There's something very tragic to that. Kierkegaard says that one has to have, and he would call this faith, but one has to have a modality of being in which you can simultaneously be completely earnest and see the ridiculousness and the transitory nature of everything. And if you're able to hold those two things simultaneously, and if you're able to hold those two things simultaneously,
like
and
testicles,
like two testicles, right? But you find it suffering, that's tragedy. But if you're able to enjoy that contradiction, that's comedy. And so for him, there is a certain mode of being, a mode of life, mode of way of being that he's inviting us into, which can simultaneously hold those two things together. And I think whenever we're talking the other night, and you threw yourself into some subjects very seriously, right? You might mention them, I won't mention them, but like a crazy subject, you take it absolutely seriously. But yet you can also simultaneously say, I don't think it's important at all. and so that whenever you said that the other night, I was like, oh, you would like Kierkegaard's reflections on comedy, because that's kind of, it's almost like like saying, for example, I'm going to be a cook. And I want to open up a restaurant, and I want to make it really good, and I want to use great food, and I want to do it really well, and I want to invite people who can't afford food to sometimes have a night in the restaurant to do something social for the community, right? And you do that, and at the same time realizing that being a cook is not really of any value, and helping a few people who can't afford to eat. It doesn't really put any significance into how many are starving.
In the grand scheme
of things, and let alone the universe. Is like, but to be able to do both of those simultaneously, go, this is incredibly important, and also I have to realize how I'm an idiot. We're all idiots. We're probably doing things wrong, and holding them simultaneously is the Kierkegaardian night of faith.
I knew I liked him for a reason. I do that. I do that, and it is. Speaking of earnestness, is truly. I know it's annoying to some folks at times who I know and friends and partners and stuff, where it's like the taking something very seriously and then just going whatever is I think annoying for other people, because it actually comes off not earnest. It comes off like disingenuous in some way. But no, it's both. I think it's a nice balance.
Yeah,
it's very fun.
Yeah, because that's Kierkegaard's point. He says, like, sometimes earnestness can be detached from the kind of infinite perspective, and that's when we start taking ourselves too seriously.
Yeah.
Like my political views, my religious views, my this, my that, or somehow absolutely the God's eye view of everything, and you take it. Once earnestness is divorced from jest, he calls it jest, then it becomes really bad.
Yeah.
But jest, whenever it's disconnected from earnestness, when you know people who are just caught up in not taking anything seriously, there's this kind of relativistic, what Linnaeus would call bulverism, but this kind of relativism. There's something really annoying about that, but somehow Kierkegaard's always talking about how you can have them at the same time, in the same moment, and there's a comedic dimension. Oh, can I say one other thing?
Yeah,
go ahead.
yeah. No, okay, cool.
This is something that McGowan says, and I think this is interesting, because he wrote a book on jokes, and he talks about the difference between what I'll call reactionary jokes and emancipatory jokes.
Nice.
So yeah, it's really interesting what he does. So reactionary jokes are jokes at which, and they can be very funny, but a joke in which you take the piss out of somebody out there, somebody who's not you. Emancipatory jokes are kind of jokes in which everybody is in on it. Like we take the piss out of ourselves. Yeah. Or, because I think, I mean, I don't know if Todd McGowan would say this, but where I can take the piss out of you, you can take the piss out of me, that's kind of the comedy that Kierkegaard's about, is that we're all caught up we all have to have a bit of humility about us. But if the comedy is only at someone else's expense and we think we've got the answer, there's an earnestness and a reactionary nature to that.
Yeah, great stuff. That was part of my shift in stand-up, was doing a lot of self-deprecating jokes and a lot of jokes aimed at myself, and that also gets old after a while of doing that over and over again, because it gets to a point where it's like, wait a minute, I think, okay, and there's other targets besides just me, but it is fun to write those jokes. So
and the bad part of it, that's a good point to add to that, is if you do comedy which is self-deprecating to, say, your own community all the time, that in itself, I think, eventually it comes under the umbrella of reactionary, because you are just you're kind of maybe saying other people are undivided, but you're divided. The whole point of emancipatory comedy is we're all divided. So it's not that the undivided one is me or the community out there, which is Orientalism, but somehow a comedy is where you're able to everyone's able to take the piss out of everything.
Because this conversation started, part of it was based in synchronicity, and then me trying to approach synchronicity from when things happen out in life that you get a kick out of. And it's very difficult to write on humor in this type of situation, because humor is so subjective. But I like what Kierkegaard's saying there, of kind of defining it by, I know you didn't say decentering, but that's kind of how okay, so for example, the closing argument of the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial. Amber Heard's lawyers are obviously the butts of jokes on the internet. There's, the court of public opinion had already ruled in Johnny Depp's favor pretty early on. They get up to do their closing argument, and as they're doing it, an Amber Alert goes off, causing everyone's phones in the courtroom to start screeching at the same time. Mm-hmm. And the judge then says that's an Amber Alert while Amber Heard is trying to do her defense. I feel that is a gift from the Lord. Mm-hmm. That was a little stork. That was a gift under the tree from Santa for everybody watching in that moment.
Yeah.
However, it would not be seen that way probably by Amber.
Yes. Well, and that from the Kierkegaardian perspective, let's look at that. He would say that if you suffer that anomaly, that's tragedy. So some people would have experienced that in an annoying way. So that would be a tragic. Because, by the way, whenever Kierkegaard talks about tragedy in comedy, he's talking about them existentially, not aesthetically in terms of theater, but existentially. So existentially, that might have been a traumatic moment for Amber Heard. But for others, it was a comedic moment. But regardless, it was kind of one or the other, because it was an event that was out of the norm, out of expectations, a novel event that basically destabilizes you.
Right. Yeah. It is like a because you run the risk. I was reading a little bit of that thing you sent me, the dissertation on this stuff about the concern of if you talk about humor. It can like dissect the bird basically, and you can things stop being funny. But I've not found that to be the case, and I was glad that the writer of this thing mentioned that. They're like, actually no, and if that does happen, if you start looking at humor in or comedy in some sort of philosophical way, and you lose your sense of humor, there's probably a good chance you didn't really have a sense of humor to begin with.
Yes, yeah.
Very much. But I do think it's like a perspective, it's a mode of consciousness that you can take to the world, and it's like it's a pair of lenses. It's not necessarily like just making fun of everything all the time or not taking things seriously. It's just recognizing when things happen that are just like, they just add a little joy, even if that another person might take a very different lens to it, I guess. Yeah.
And then connecting the two, so like when Kierkegaard starts by talking about how comedy in general is like the Amber Alert that happens at the Amber Heard trial, or these events that happen that are out of the norm. Somebody, say, he turns up at a wedding wearing a Hawaiian shirt, which I think is an example from that paper. We should give a shout out to whoever wrote that. I forget. There was a paper we were both reading about Kierkegaard and comedy, which is very good, found on the internet.
I thought you were gonna bring up the Britney Spears' ex-husband who crashed her wedding and had to be escorted by.
Oh, is that right?
Security, and I think got arrested. It's by Will Williams.
Will Williams.
PhD. Thanks, Will.
Well, it's his PhD dissertation, and it's online. Hey,
so Will Williams. That's too many Wills.
Yeah.
What's your middle name? Williamson. Will Williamson Williams. See, we're killing it.
Yeah.
Already.
Yep. What was I saying? There's the Kierkegaard starts with that, like, these are things that happen in life that are just anomalies that are kind of like comedic, and it doesn't mean laugh out loud or anything. It's just something's out of place, something weird happens that, jarring. But then the way he connects it then to say, but comedy is also ontological, it's also part of reality itself, that there's something comedic, not just that happens in everyday life, but there's something about to be human is to take things absolutely seriously, to have care and concern for the world, Heidegger would say, and also simultaneously to understand our finitude, our limits.
Yeah.
And Pascal was brilliant in this, because Pascal basically said our reason makes us gods. Like, our reason is like this incredible ability to know things, truth, like, triangles have three sides or whatever, like things that are real, and yet
triangles don't exist.
Yeah, that's true.
Technically,
that's a conspiracy.
Yeah, technically they don't exist.
Well, that's true. That technically, it's a concept. Yeah, but that's a truth. That's a truth. Like,
hilarious.
All the Platonic forms. What exists? There's no circles in reality. The only circle is in your mind. Absolutely. But then a drop of water can kill you. that humans can be destroyed in the simplest of ways. So Pascal had this in Pensée, this beautiful, again, way of almost catching the comedy of life. Like, there's not comedy as in not funny, because that's not funny. We can die from a drop of water, but there's something comedically interesting that we have this, beautiful power, and we can take things seriously and give ourselves to an ultimate concern to something, and at the same time see how pointless everything is.
Right.
Yeah.
Laugh still.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the Schrodinger's cat thing,
Yeah.
and it's a state of suspension until you look at it, and then it takes a certain form or particle or wave or whatever it is, and also just the attention you give something can affect the thing on a quantum level. And I think if you go through life and the attention you give it is one that is open to both being very earnest and engaged with life, but also being able to step back and go, this is so stupid, then that's nice. It changes, it makes life itself seem, I think, a little bit more better and healthier. Here's the other thing too. Everyone, I don't know if you know this or not, there's a lot of people that are depressed. Have you heard of this?
Seriously?
Yeah. And there's a whole industry built on trying to get people not be depressed. I've looked into it. It's wild. And they'll pay money, and they'll, sometimes they'll take it's crazy.
Wow.
They'll talk about their problems. It's like, I don't know why you would do it. But there is so much, I think, emphasis on just diminishing or reducing the depression rather than amplifying the happy stuff a little bit. And it's so, because that's what you do in medicine. The majority of the time in medicine is you are trying to fix an illness of some kind, or fix a problem that is defective. But then there's this other world in which the defectiveness and the decentering and the not at oneness, as you would say, is a good, adds something to life. But it is, you have to, that I think only goes so far unless you're actually, it's not like, I'm not saying that's a fix for it. In fact, I think it's less about fixing depression as it is about building up this sort of like ability to see things and hold things. It's fun.
Yeah, Kierkegaard's, his definition of anxiety was precisely, in a way, the dizziness of freedom, the sense in which we live in these kinds of contradictions. And so in analysis, one of the things they do, an analyst will do with somebody who's melancholic, is not try to make them happy, not try to get rid of their depression, but we'll listen to find the little moment where there is a spark of desire for life. So the melancholic, who'll feel like no real desire for life, could feel almost completely dead inside. So they're walking dead, they're alive physically, but they feel dead, and they're fixated and stuck, and there's very little spark, but you'll always find it when you listen, you'll find some spark, and then all you do is attempt to allow that spark to breathe.
When you say spark, you mean like something that you see the zest for life, a little something?
Yeah, a little something. Like Viktor Frankl, he once said, like, his question to people in analysis was like, why have you not killed yourself? And the reason for him asking that was to say, well, there's a reason why. Something's keeping you alive. Something's got you here. And you probably don't even know what it is. You probably don't feel it. Jameson Webster did a great talk on this at Wake, and she talked about Alexander McQueen, who was melancholic, and Sylvia Plath, both people who killed themselves. But she was talking about, like, what could one do? And she was, through looking at Sylvia Plath's poetry and some of Alexander McQueen's art and fashion, kind of like we were isolating the points where there was a spark of desire for the world and enjoyment for the world, and that's kind of what, with a melancholic, you're trying to give, kind of like fan that little bit. And it's very dangerous, because when the melancholic feels a lust for life for a second, they can often react against it, and it can often throw them even further back. So it's a very dangerous. I can't remember what we're talking about, but it does connect with this. Anyway, go ahead.
No, after you have the more.
I was just going to connect it with this notion that you kind of find the earnestness, the thing that the person lives for, something that they're concerned about. in the midst of feeling completely like nothing makes sense, like you're kind of almost trying to invite the person into faith, what Kierkegaard would call faith, which is into a life where you find something of ultimate concern that you will live and die for, while simultaneously still acknowledging what the melancholic knows, which is, life from a certain perspective.
Life's a bitch.
Is a bitch and meaningless, so it's utterly meaningful and utterly meaningless at the same time.
Yes.
Yeah. And how do we hold that? And tragedy is when we suffer under it, and comedy is when we find pleasure in it.
Yeah, and I don't buy into that whole thing of you got to be depressed to be a funny person, or you got to be depressed to be an artist.
Yeah, but, look at you. You're very depressed, and fucking never make me laugh.
Or make art.
Yeah.
I've never made a single artistic thing. But yeah, it's.
Well, how's your pottery going in light of that? Actually, have you were doing some pottery?
I almost got a bowl going.
Oh, right, nice.
Yeah, I'm pretty impressed by it.
If everything else doesn't work out, you can go into pottery.
Yes, everyone gets partial bowls.
Nice.
I need to keep doing it. It's just so hot right now. It's in the garage.
Oh, so have you bought the thing and you're?
Oh yeah.
Very good. Because my friend Phil Harrison, he does it. He does
really
great stuff in Belfast. Now he got into it, and yeah, it took him, I guess, 6 months or so or more, but eventually he started creating beautiful pieces.
Yeah, the first part is pretty simple because you can learn how to make a bowl relatively quickly.
Yeah.
But then when it starts getting above that, it takes from what I understand, a really long time. But yeah, it's definitely not something that I've yet clicked with, when you're doing like a new hobby and you're like, I get it, I love it, I'm into it. For me, that's just a lot of schoolwork and reading, and I love doing that. And that goes back to that earnest kind of earnestness, which always, anytime you say that word, I think of Ernest Goes to Jail or whatever, the old guy. Do you know Ernest? Did you ever see those?
I think I saw one. Was there a series of these films? Ernest.
Yeah, Ernest is whatever.
I don't know if I've seen them, but I've heard of them.
I recall them being hilarious, but I need to go back and see if they hold up. But anyway, yeah, that kind of earnestness is absolutely delightful. You can go through life and have it. Yeah, okay. Yeah. I lost my thoughts.
Yeah. No, I had a couple of thoughts now. One is the thing about pottery, by the way, is it's you're creating a void, which is really interesting. So there's empty space, but then you make a kind of wall around the empty space, and then you create a kind of you give empty space a shape. Then there's something really interesting in that.
That would be your take on it. Yeah. Because I was thinking, it's like, you're making circles, which is just a wholeness, symbol for wholeness.
Oh yeah, whereas I'm going, no, you're making the void.
It's empty. It's empty.
Giving shape to the void, which captures this notion of like we all briefly shape the void. But this is also why Kierkegaard wrote Fear and Trembling. Whereas in Fear and Trembling, I think the key to that book, very interesting little book, but is he really was interested in Abraham and Isaac, because Abraham basically completely commits to killing his son and also completely believes that he'll get his son back. So kind of holds two mutually contradictory ideas.
He thought he was going to get his son back, in the afterlife or something?
Well, so there was a promise before that he would, his kids, he would be the father of many nations and all this stuff. So I think there was this certain sense in which, the son was, he was in total faith that he was going to lose his son, but weirdly going to retain his son. And Kierkegaard does these really interesting reflections about how hard that is to philosophically understand, but that notion of holding contradictory ideas is something fundamental to being human. And then in the concluding unscientific postscript, he's basically saying, and that is comedy, that's comedic. And of course that's how he connects it to Christianity, because he says Christianity is a modality of being in which you embrace contradiction. So he says Christianity is a joke.
It sounds similar to, but different from Jung's answer to Job. Have you read that?
Well, I think I did read it actually, because it's a short piece.
Short.
It's very, very interesting.
Really interesting, but a similar idea, not related to comedy, but in reading it as sort of God basically kind of being a jerk and needing Job to see himself as not the nicest.
Yeah, I think that's a very radical reading. Someone like G.K. Chesterton did something similar. I think that's the right reading of it, is that you see God as a bit of an idiot, as divided.
Yeah, and needing the human subject to kind of very fun. But I read about this term that I wanted to tell you about because I thought it was a cool term, and you probably know what it is. Have you heard of the Criterion of embarrassment?
No, this is great.
It's really
I can't
cool.
wait.
It's this idea in New Testament scholarliness.
Scholarliness.
Scholar, you figure out the word. Where
Criterion
the
of
criterion of embarrassment.
embarrassment.
I love that.
Okay.
But it basically says that if you want to be able to differentiate between what was said by Jesus, the historical Jesus, versus perhaps what was later added, then you can use the criterion of embarrassment, where if what he said would be causing a problem to Christian orthodoxy, it likely came from the historical Jesus. Otherwise, why would they put it in there?
Yeah, no, I have
That's
a different
very
term
fun.
for that, but yeah, I know that term. Yeah, I know that idea. It's very interesting because Luther was very into that as well. It's like almost like the more unlikely it was, the more comedic, the more strange, then the more likelihood it was said. But precisely because it wouldn't have been written down.
Right.
Because it would. So that's very good. It's a good criterion.
Yeah, it was in the context of I think one of the examples was the miracle of healing the blind man with the stuff on his eyes, I guess.
Oh yeah, mud.
And then also calling for castration to enter the kingdom of heaven, and which I don't know if that's really what he was saying or not. I don't understand that, but stuff where it's weird stuff that he said.
Yeah.
That
Whenever people wouldn't be motivated to put it in, you have to take it almost more seriously,
right.
because if there's a motivation for people to put something in, then there's always a possibility that they did that.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting criterion.
I just like the title, Criterion of Embarrassment.
Yeah, that's very good.
I'm going to log that away in the long-term memory. And then this whole idea of the Kierkegaardian humor and all this stuff, that also, you see this a lot. I think it actually is less common than the stereotype would suggest, but you see the comedic mindset, and this was in that paper by Willie Williamson, where it's like the comedic mindset is often offended by the religious mindset because they see it as being too rigid, too serious, too tragic, whereas the religious mindset is threatened by the comedic mindset, which always comes to disrupt and not take seriously very important matters.
Yeah. Yes.
But apparently Kierkegaard's thing is both of them essentially work together within Christianity.
Yeah. So he takes religiosity mostly in a positive, like in an existential sense. So he's talking about that religiosity at its most authentic. Let's say authentic religiosity is the combination, of earnestness and jest. And he argues, that the central kind of notion of Christianity is living that contradiction between the finite and the infinite. So, what's beautiful is even actually you look in the early days where, like, whenever early Christians were told to, pay homage to the gods, the Roman gods, they didn't. They refused, even to the point of death. Now, the irony was, no, the Romans didn't believe in the gods either. So that at the time it was like, listen, just pretend that you give your sacrifice to the gods. No one believes in them. Just do it. Why would you die? Why would you get eaten by lions for something as ridiculous as, we know you don't believe in the gods. No one believes in the gods except for idiots, right? So just pretend. And they would go, no. And for Kierkegaard, there's something inherently comedic about that. because you are, and I love this, and I won't give examples because it's too political, contemporary, but whenever you find someone who will give themselves to a position that other people think is idiotic, and they will potentially lose their lives for that commitment, whether you agree with them or not, there's something in which that person has taken a tiny thing and made it the fulcrum of their existence. Yeah. And if they can simultaneously see how ridiculous that is and still say, but here I stand.
That's someone who is at least very much engaging with life in an incredibly weird way, but they're really going for it.
And you
really believe in stuff. Okay.
And potentially when you look at all the radicals in history, people who have really changed history, there's something about, you go like, they took a stand on something that weirdly, here's one thing: they often take a stand on something that everybody knows, or everyone agrees with, but no, everyone pays lip service to. But they go, no, I am not paying lip service to it. I'm standing there full,
Yeah.
and you go like, you're going to lose your whole life for this. You're going to destroy your reputation. This, that. Yep. Those are the people who change things. Sometimes for the worse, sometimes for the better. But it's an incredible way to live, and Kierkegaard's always about living intensely.
Yeah.
Like it's intense form of the modality of life.
Yeah, you engage with life and
Yes.
don't just sit back and let it happen to you.
Yeah, and that's why he talks about truth as subjective as well, because it's like it's not truth is something objective that you look at. It's a form of subjectively bringing together jest and earnestness in your body and being able to somehow bear the yoke, the weight of that yoke.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what makes you an individual.
It's
It makes
nice.
you, yeah.
I like that a lot. Should make this podcast probably funnier though.
Yeah.
That's no, I have no desire. I don't like you have to make jokes since you're talking about humor. I was doing speaking of funny, I have a wonderful partner who doesn't know really anything about the Bible, has never had any exposure to it, you want to have you want to learn how much you know about the Bible or how much you don't know about the Bible. Just get asked questions by somebody who's absolutely like completely just. She was like, hold on. So there's an Old Testament and a New Testament.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, baby.
Yeah.
There's two testaments. She's like, but the Torah, the Jewish Bible, is it nope, it's not the Bible. That's also in there? Yes. She's like, why? I'm like, I don't know. No, I kind of decided I wasn't invited to the meeting.
Yeah, yes, you weren't called into that meeting.
Yeah, and then I was like, there's other books too. There's the Gnostic Gospels as well, and those came a little later, and they didn't make the canon. It's called being canonized. They didn't make it in. She's like, why? I'm like, I don't know. I'm sure they have their reasons. She's like, so it's just different. Who wrote it? I was like, okay. I was like, well, different people wrote it throughout, and then they compiled it all together, and then it changed.
Please stop asking me questions.
Please. Now I'm realizing I don't know how to. I was like, you can think of it like a library. It's like you go into a library, you don't expect every book to be written by the same person or be even in the same genre sometimes. So she's like, wow, okay. How many books are there? 60 something? I don't know.
Yeah.
How many are there? Do you know?
66, I think.
66, yeah.
A few more in the Apocrypha.
Yeah,
When outside of it, but
then my brain would flip over into something, and I'd start answering a question, then I'd realize I could talk about it for like 15 minutes.
Oh yeah, I'm sure there's lots of stuff in there.
I was like, well, there's Genesis, and then I was able to just list basically the entire like Old Testament books, and it was very, very wild. I was like, don't even get me started on Leviticus, babe.
Did you bring out your felt board and do the little felt characters? Did you ever?
Oh man, yeah. Whoa, what a blast! That's yeah. Speaking of memories that you're bringing out, yeah. Those were always so. I always just want to touch them. Very tactile.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That's any closing comments, thoughts? What's our takeaways on?
I didn't know Kierkegaard just talks about this stuff so specifically because I thought I was having some original thoughts about the humor being baked into the and I think you also see it just in because I'm on this kick right now with all the kind of quantum stuff, and as much as anyone can understand it who isn't in that field, I don't even think the people in the field can understand it, but there's things like that too that I think are just inherently very funny, like the fact that if you get down to an atomic level, which is what everything is made of, nothing is touching, and there's no matter there. It's just probability and energy swirling around. There's no hard building block of life. Everything is just, and then yet I can clap my hands, and they don't mold into each other or pass through each other. What's going on? What's going on there?
Yeah. I mean, Kierkegaard very much, he obviously writing before the kind of modern physics, but like the dialectics of Hegel, and Kierkegaard thought he was against Hegel, but so different dialectics. But the work of Hegel and Kierkegaard really fits with modern physics. Like it's a philosophy that blends well, and Zizek has written very well on it. There's a book, Less Than Nothing, that he's got, that looks at quantum mechanics in relation to some of these Kierkegaardian and
Cool.
Hegelian ideas, and they fit very well together.
Yeah.
And Kierkegaard, you could take Kierkegaardian look on that and say, of course, like he did say, right at the core of the universe, you will find a contradiction.
Yeah.
You will find these kind of contradictions, which say modern physics and modern biology, modern psychoanalysis have all found in their different.
All different frameworks that show the same thing,
Yeah.
and it's very fun. I mean, there's matter, but there's not matter. What's that about? That's a
Yeah.
pun. That's funny, okay?
Yeah.
And also kind of mind-bending, which is if you try to think about it real hard, you get a little bit of a headache. So,
Yeah.
that's what would be my closing thoughts. I can't wait to read more about this from this guy, and then also kind of flip through the few Kierkegaard books that I have.
Yeah. No, I just when we were talking, and the thing that I was wondering is because you were talking about I was asking you about synchronicity, and we were talking about that, and I thought, in some respects, there might be a way of blending the two. So, sometimes I think the standard reading of synchronicity, which is not, it's not my kind of field, but is sometimes people read it as kind of like showing that there's people make meaning out of it,
Yes.
right? But if you have a Kierkegaard, if you kind of look at it more in terms of Kierkegaard's understanding of comedy, you might more say certain events happen in life that are unusual, out of the ordinary. They're kind of contradictory to what you're going to imagine and expect, and those things don't so much tell you that everything is meaningful, but more kind of remind you that there's novelty and strangeness, and don't take yourself too seriously. It's almost like, it's like, yes, take yourself seriously, give yourself to something, and somehow simultaneously also say, but we're all Laurel and Hardy, we're all like in the office, we're all the comedy, we're all idiots.
Yeah.
But, and somehow hold the two. And synchronicities, maybe there's a way to interpret synchronicity in light of Kierkegaard's notion of the comedic. That's what I want you to write a paper on. That's what I want you to write a paper on.
Maybe one day, yeah. I mean, this one won't be quite that direction, but we've talked about the classic story of synchronicity with Jung and the patient, correct?
Oh yeah, with the bug,
the scarab beetle.
Yeah.
I was like leaving the house today, and I was like, okay. I was like, I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna go do this. I'm gonna write this paper on, do this podcast, and then write this paper on synchronicity. And then when I left my door, there were 3 dead scarab beetles right on my front, right outside the door. And I thought it was funny that they were dead.
Yeah, and they really were, because those beetles today, are they in LA? That would be even weirder.
There's a relative scarab. There's a version of
Otherwise,
scarab
I'd be
beetles
saying, I'd be calling the police. I think someone's taken Egyptian bugs and just
Yeah.
placed them at dead ones at your door.
They weren't gold, I can tell you that.
Yeah,
But they looked pretty, like, I don't know what they were trying to do, but that's the whole story, is the scarab beetle's trying to get in the window to the, if you're not familiar, the patient had a dream about a scarab beetle. When she's relaying it, a scarab beetle appears behind the window. Jung grabs it and says, here's your beetle, and it causes her to have this transformative experience. And so I just think it's funny that they were trying to get in. They were also trying to get into my living room, but then they died because I wasn't there to see it.
And here's the thought on that, okay? Here's the thought, because, that's a weird story of Jung's. That's an interesting story, but I go like, actually, it kind of makes sense. Whenever something really happens like that, something that you cannot help but go, whatever the statistics, it's like, yeah, exactly. I think if you take a Kierkegaardian look at it, you can simultaneously go, I can't help taking that absolutely seriously as saying something, and simultaneously going, it's a coincidence.
Yep.
It means nothing.
You can do both.
You can do both, and if you suffer under that, you're living in a tragic modality. Mm-hmm. And if you're able to gain pleasure from that experience of simultaneously finding meaning in something and also going, it's meaningless, then again, you're touching on the comedic dimension that is reality itself.
Yep, and if you go into the other end, where you take everything as a synchronicity and everything super seriously and everything is super meaningful, and you're looking always on the outside for what to do, then that's not good either.
Oh yeah, God, no, that's it.
That can lead you down a cuckoo for Cocoa Puff territory.
And that was Kierkegaard's critique of religion in its worst form is earnestness, complete earnestness, and we can say political religions today or economic religions is when you completely think it's you've got it and it's meaningful and you've got the answer, like you're losing the perspective of eternity, and it's really dangerous and really damaging. So yeah, you've got to and I love that Kierkegaard's not a mediation guy. He doesn't say, he's dialectician, so it's about extremes. He's not saying, well, you have to go a blend of going like, it's a little bit of meaning and a little bit of meaninglessness, or we're not sure. No, it's both simultaneously. That's a Kierkegaardian dialectic, is that reality is not some middle road, not some kind of whole, but rather a radical asymmetry.
Yeah, I think that's a good clarification, because people hear that and they go, I have to do this, but I also have to do it this.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's both.
Yes, it's not kind of finding a middle way. It's not kind of blending the two. It's not agnosticism. It's like atheism and theism, not agnosticism. It's like taking extreme positions that simultaneously enrich and critique each other.
Like they bounce, like sparks.
Yes, but yeah, that's
Iron.
it. And it's very hard to philosophically understand. That's why it takes years to understand dialectics, because it's very hard to make rational sense of it, but it is possible to do. And Kierkegaard is one of the greatest thinkers. He's one of the thinkers who makes sense of contradiction.
Well, great. I'll put a quote of his in the paper, and if I get a bad grade, I'll blame you.
But very good. And do you think we'll upload this one?
I think so.
Because we either don't record them, as we were saying the other night, or we do record them.
Two things we need to do.
Don't bother to upload them.
Yep. So one is going to go, it's just me and Pete talking. It's going to go on the Patreon at patreon.com/fundamentalists. You can check that out. And this one will go up for the masses.
Brilliant.
Maybe
Wonderful.
even on Sunday.
Oh my goodness, that would be
imagine?
amazing.
Let's see.
Great.
You'll
All
know
right.
before we do, guys. Bye.
Thanks, and thanks, Katie. Bye.
Thanks, Katie.